The city of Chronos was a monument to human ingenuity, a labyrinth of steel and glass that rose defiantly against the gray sky. Its inhabitants, accustomed to the rhythm of a modern metropolis, lived under the illusion of control, that each day was a blank canvas to be painted by their own choices. This illusion, however, was about to be shattered by echoes from a distant future. It all began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Small interferences in the radio waves, static that intruded on the nightly broadcasts. The technicians at the local station attributed it to faulty equipment, solar anomalies, to anything that could keep the universe's order intact. But Lena Petrova, a young investigative journalist with a nose for the unusual, sensed there was something more. She spent her nights tuning into obscure frequencies, recording the noises, and eventually the voices. Distorted, almost spectral voices that seemed to whisper from beyond time.
Collapse of the East Bridge at 1437. A metallic voice, heavy with static, filled Lena's small apartment. She wrote it down, skeptical but curious. Hours later, the news exploded across all communication channels. A structural accident on the East Bridge, exactly at 1437. A coincidence? Lena didn't believe in coincidences. She began cataloging the transmissions, searching for patterns, and what she found was disturbing. The voices from the future weren't random. They were warnings, portents of imminent disasters. With the increasing frequency and precision of the warnings, the city could no longer ignore them. Dr. Elias Vance, a renowned quantum physicist with a reputation for fierce skepticism, was called in to lead the investigation. Elias, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and an unkempt beard, had isolated himself in his research after the loss of his family in an accident he believed he could have prevented. He saw science as the only truth, and anything that challenged its laws was, by definition, a fallacy. Yet, the evidence was irrefutable. The transmissions were coming from 200 years in the future, a temporal paradox that defied his entire understanding of the universe.
It's as if we're receiving a weather report from tomorrow, but instead of rain, it forecasts tragedies, he explained to Captain Eva Rostova, the head of city security. Eva, a woman with an austere expression and a penetrating gaze, listened with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Her priority was the city's safety, and the idea of a predetermined future was a threat to her very existence. And what do we do with this information, Doctor? Do we let it happen, or do we try to change what is to come? Eva's question hung in the air, laden with a weight that none of them could yet comprehend. The first transmissions were of minor events, but their accuracy was uncanny. A gas leak in a residential building, a subway derailment on the Southern Line, a fire in a port warehouse. Each time, Lena, with her network of informants and sharp intuition, managed to alert the authorities in time. Captain Rostova, initially skeptical, found herself forced to act. Lives were saved, disasters were mitigated. The city of Chronos, once at the mercy of fate, seemed to have found a shield against the future.
Dr. Vance, despite his initial reluctance to accept the inexplicable, threw himself headlong into analyzing the transmissions. He built complex models, trying to decipher the spectral language arriving from the future. His team, a mix of linguists, mathematicians, and engineers, worked tirelessly. With every success in averting a catastrophe, a wave of euphoria swept through the command center's corridors. For the first time in years, Elias felt a purpose that transcended the pain of his past. Perhaps, he thought, the future wasn't as immutable as the laws of physics suggested. However, the euphoria was short-lived. The first major intervention was to prevent the collapse of the Centennial Bridge, a vital structure for the city. The transmission was clear: structural failure, Centennial Bridge, 2,300 hours, hundreds of casualties. With hours to spare,
The bridge was evacuated, and engineers were sent to reinforce the critical points. At 2300 hours, the bridge remained intact, a triumph. The city breathed a sigh of relief. But the next morning, shocking news shook Chronos. An outbreak of a rare and aggressive respiratory disease had erupted in the Eastern District, primarily affecting children. There were no precedents, no explanation. The hospitals were quickly overwhelmed. The joy of the previous night turned into a cold, inexplicable terror.
Elias and Eva met, their faces etched with exhaustion and bewilderment. "It doesn't make sense," Elias murmured, rubbing his temples. "We averted one tragedy, but another, even more cruel, emerged out of nowhere." Eva, with her usually firm posture, seemed shaken. "It's as if the future is readjusting, Doctor. As if there is a balance we cannot break." Lena, who was also present, showed them a pattern she had discovered in the most recent transmissions. "The new tragedies, they aren't mentioned in the original transmissions. It's as if they are new." The implication was terrifying. By trying to change the future, they weren't erasing it, but rather rewriting it in unpredictable and often darker ways. Fate, it seemed, had a macabre sense of humor. The city of Chronos had gained the ability to see the future, but at a cost they were only beginning to understand. The outbreak of the respiratory disease was just the beginning. Each time the city of Chronos intercepted a transmission and acted to avert the foretold catastrophe, a new and more bizarre tragedy manifested. A sudden flood in an arid district, caused by an irrigation system that inexplicably failed and turned into an uncontrollable geyser. A total blackout that lasted for days, not from a grid failure, but from a strange magnetic anomaly that disabled all electronic devices, leading to chaos and looting. A deafening silence that gripped the city for hours, leaving people in a state of stupor and disorientation, as if reality itself had been paused.
Dr. Elias Vance, once a beacon of hope, now carried the weight of each new calamity. His eyes, once merely tired, now reflected a profound anguish. He felt like a chess player in a match against an invisible, omniscient opponent, where every move to avoid checkmate resulted in an even more valuable piece being lost. The redemption he sought for the loss of his family seemed increasingly distant, replaced by a growing guilt for the lives he felt he had indirectly sacrificed. Captain Eva Rostova, in turn, hardened. Her pragmatism transformed into an ironclad conviction that they were meddling with forces they did not understand. "Elias, we have to stop," she pleaded, her voice strained. "Every time we try to fix it, we make it worse. We're creating monsters, Doctor." She pointed to the reports, to the rising number of casualties, to the demoralization of the security forces. The order she so deeply valued was disintegrating under the weight of the unpredictable.
Lena Petrova, the journalist, documented everything. Her reports, once celebrated as acts of heroism, were now read with a mixture of fascination and horror. She watched the city divide, those who clamored for more interventions, believing the solution lay in trying harder and harder, and those who demanded an end to the manipulations, fearing what else the future might hold for them. Panic was palpable in the streets of Chronos. People looked at the sky, at the radio screens, at their neighbors, with growing distrust. Who would be the next victim in the macabre dance of fate? The conflict between Elias and Eva reached its peak. Elias, driven by an almost religious stubbornness, believed there was a logic, a pattern to be discovered in the future's reactions. "We can't just give up, Eva. If we stop, we are accepting defeat, accepting that we are mere puppets of a pre-written destiny." He argued that each new tragedy was a clue, a way for the future to communicate, to show them the rules of the game. Eva, however, sought only destruction. "The rules of the game, Elias, are that there are no rules. We are blind, acting without knowledge, and the price is our very existence."
The tension between them was a reflection of Chronos' divided soul, a city caught between the hope for a better future and the terror of a present distorted by its own choices.
Amid the chaos and despair, a new transmission, stronger and clearer than any before, erupted from the receivers. It was not a whisper, but a scream. The voice, once distorted, now seemed almost human, laden with a desperate urgency. The great forgetting. The city will be erased in 24 hours. There is no escape. The words were fragmented, but their meaning was unmistakable. A final catastrophe of existential proportions threatened to wipe Chronos from the timeline. This wasn't a bridge, a disease, or a blackout. It was the end of everything. Elias, his face pale and eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, finally had an epiphany. It wasn't about changing the future, but about understanding its nature. The new tragedies weren't punishments, but reactions. The future wasn't a fixed path, but a river with countless currents. Every intervention created a new branch, a new course, and the river always found a way to reach its final destination, even if by a different and more tortuous path. The only way to break the cycle wasn't to fight the current, but to redirect it.
His proposal was radical, bordering on madness. "We cannot prevent the great forgetting," Elias declared to Eva and Lena, who looked at him with a mixture of exhaustion and distrust. "But we can change what it means. The transmissions come from 200 years in the future. What if we become the transmissions?" Elias explained his theory. If they could send a message back in time, a message that would become the very origin of the echoes, they could close the causal loop. Not to change the past, but to shape the future they were receiving. The message wouldn't be a warning of catastrophe, but a guide, an instruction for future generations on how to handle the paradoxes they themselves would create. Eva, ever the pragmatist, saw the flaw. "Elias, this is suicide. You're proposing we sacrifice ourselves to become an echo." Lena, however, saw the hope. The journalist who sought the truth now saw a chance to create it. But what if it's the only way to give meaning to all of this, to transform tragedy into a legacy? The decision was monumental: to sacrifice the present to save a future they would never see, or to continue fighting a losing battle against a relentless fate.
As the final hours dwindled, the city of Chronos came together. There was no more panic, only a strange resignation and a spark of hope. Elias, with the help of Ava and Lena, prepared the quantum transmitter, a device he had built in secret based on his most daring research. The message would not be one of despair, but of knowledge, a history of Chronos' errors and triumphs, a survival guide for a future they had inadvertently created. It was an act of faith, a leap into the void. When the great forgetting finally arrived, it did not come with a bang, but with a silence. The city of Chronos was not erased, but transformed. Its buildings did not crumble, but became ethereal. Its people did not vanish, but became part of the very tapestry of time. They became the echoes. From that moment on, the radio transmissions from the future were no longer warnings of catastrophes, but whispers of wisdom, guides for the generations to come. The city of Chronos had not changed the future, but had become the future, a beacon of warning and hope, a living paradox proving that destiny is not a straight line, but a circle, and that sometimes, to find salvation, one must become the message itself. And so the echoes of the future continued to resonate, not as harbingers of doom, but as the persistent voice of humanity, learning and adapting, forever in dialogue with time.